Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Amber Graziano, and today we have an incredible guest joining us, a person who has made a massive impact in my life personally. His name is Matt Salis. He's an author, a podcaster, and a mentor to many, including myself. His blog, Sober and Unashamed, is how I first met him when I Googled, "Do I have a drinking problem?" I came across Matt. I did a deep dive into his writing, and he absolutely captivated me with quotes like this: "If there was a way to keep alcohol in my life without alcohol taking away everything, I assure you I would have found it." Matt Salis, we've never met in person, but we've spent many, many hours together on Zoom. And I hold you personally responsible for helping me stay sober permanently. Welcome to the show, Matt. How are you doing?
Oh my gosh, I'm blushing. I'm floating. I don't know how I could be doing anything but awesome with an introduction like that. Wow. Yeah, you give me way too much credit, but I really, really appreciate you welcoming me here. And I'm enjoying all the time that we spend together and looking forward to having a great conversation today.
Awesome. Well, before we get into it, just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, what you're doing now, and then we'll get more into your story. I want to pick your brain on all things sobriety and exercise and everything else that we have in common. So tell us about you.
My wife and I run three peer support groups. And when we do what we call intakes, right? When we get to know people for the first time, usually over Zoom, sometimes over the phone, I write down on a piece of paper the word normal when I start to hear someone's story and it is just like mine. And so, there is no normal and abnormal. It's just a shorthand, right? It's a way for me to quickly get into the mindset of the person. I have what I think is a very typical, very normal story as it relates to alcohol. I grew up in a middle class family, had food and shelter and loving parents. And so my eventual need to self medicate didn't come from physical abuse as a child or sexual abuse. So I was blessed, very, very blessed in that way. But I was pushed, I was driven to succeed in school and any athletic endeavors that I took part in. It wasn't enough just to participate. You needed to work really hard and try to be your best. And eventually, somewhere along the lines, I kind of absorbed that drive that was being pushed on me, and it became an internal drive. And so whether it was grades or success in career, or again, any kind of athletic endeavor, I just never felt like I was enough. I was always pushing myself to be more and to be better. Mixed in with that was also typical, also normal, right? Was alcohol experimentation in high school. And then in college, when the chains were off and there was nobody watching me and I didn't have a curfew and I had all this freedom unleashed on me, the drinking really became, I've said before, I think alcohol was my major in college. I recently, not too long ago, I was going to do some grad school work and I had to pull my transcript, and I've always thought I had a B average. I didn't have a B average. I was like a C student, man. And I barely graduated. I've got a couple of stories of how I almost got kicked out of school. So alcohol had a huge hold on my life back in college, but I was surrounded by other people for whom alcohol had a huge hold, and I didn't recognize it as a problem back then. So it wasn't until my now wife, we dated at the end of college, and then we moved in together after college, fought, bickered, argued all the time. Alcohol was ever present, couple of cocktails after work every day. And then on the weekend, just, going to town like I was still in college. And alcohol caused all kinds of relationship distress. And it wasn't until the relationship distress and trying to figure that out that I really realized, and believe me, I fought it for a long time, but eventually succumbed to the fact that alcohol was what was causing all the personal problems in my life and relationship problems as well. I never had legal problems. I never lost a job. No big financial collapses, although obviously if we sit down and we add up the dollars of alcohol that we've consumed, it's impossible to say there was no financial impact, but I didn't lose my house or anything like that. It was alcohol was just always kind of in the background, hanging out and making things worse. And it took me a long time to see that.
Wow. We have so much in common, and that's what I mean when I say that your blog just captivated me. And this is Sober and Unashamed, everybody. So when I started reading every blog that I read, I was like, oh my gosh, I can totally relate to that. Wow, I did that too. Everything that you write about, it just spoke to me. And so I read another blog, another blog, another blog. And that's what I love about you and the way that you present sobriety to the world, because you are so relatable. You said the word normal. You were a normal guy doing normal things. You were a normal drinker. And I'm like, that was me. That was me. And so I got down to the bottom of one of your blogs one day and it said, if you want to stop drinking and you need help, join Shout Sobriety. So I clicked the button because at that point in my life, I had gone 65 days sober 2 or 3 times. So I was so close to making it stick. But for some reason, I just kept relapsing. And I was so annoyed with the cycle that I just wanted out. And I came across you at the perfect time in my life, and I joined Shout Sobriety. So let's talk a little bit about that. There's a few people in Recovery Roadrunners who are also in Shout Sobriety. So you're kind of a local legend around here. And somebody's name who I say more often than you might think. I'll say, "Oh, Matt Salis from Shout Sobriety," because I really do see you as somebody who made a massive, massive impact in my life.
Wow. Well, I appreciate that. I've always enjoyed our time together. Yeah, back to the word normal. That was actually a big hump for me to get over because I would look at my drinking and say, I don't have this big crash and burn story. Looking back now, I mean, I was certainly sugarcoating some things. Like there were some times I should have died, right? There was a time I slept in a bush and it was 33 degrees and raining all night. And, hypothermia should have set in. I don't know how I survived that. There were times when I drove and I shouldn't. So it was definitely worse than I thought it was looking through my rose colored glasses at the time. But when I started to write and connect with people, it surprised me because I thought, my story isn't this, made for TV movie crash and burn, thing where there's death and there's divorce and there's legal complications. And so why would anyone care? Like I'm just a heavy drinker who can't seem to find the shutoff valve when he needs to. And so I was really surprised when I started writing and realized, oh, there's millions of us that fall into that category. So it's the headlines or the movies get made about people who don't stop digging and start climbing the way you and I did before it was too late. But the vast majority of people for whom sobriety would be a benefit, I think, fall into a category that you and I fall into. And I'm not trying to, I use the term high functioning alcoholic a lot. And sometimes I get pushback. People are like, oh, you think you're better than a gutter drunk? No, I don't. I don't think I'm better at all. I just think I got off before I reached bottom, And so I was eventually going there. There's nothing about me that's different than anyone else for whom alcohol becomes a huge problem. I just was lucky. I was lucky that I started at a place where I had a lot of runway to figure it out and get off before it became debilitating. So Shout Sobriety definitely grew out of the blog, the Sober and Unashamed blog. I said the 12 steps were not a good fit for me. AA was not a good fit for me for a variety of reasons. I have over time, I have written some very disparaging things about AA. My opinion has definitely changed over the years. I feel like when I created Shout Sobriety, I wanted to create a better mousetrap because too many people enter the rooms of AA and they don't make it and they relapse and they return to drinking. And so there's got to be a better way to do this, I thought. And what I've come to realize now is it's not about there being a better way. It's about there being a large variety of ways. There need to be a bunch of different programs, and we live in a time, we're so blessed. There are literally thousands of different people and programs out there trying to help people find sobriety. And so it's just a matter of finding the one that's the right fit for you. So for people for whom the 12 steps and the community of Alcoholics Anonymous is a good fit, go get them, Tiger. It's the biggest, it's the oldest. And, I'm rooting for people who are in AA, but AA is not one size fits all. That's one of the areas where I still push back on AA is this whole dogma of it works if you work it. It works for some people if they work it. For other people, that's not the right fit. And so Shout Sobriety is a collection of the things that worked for me. Bibliotherapy. I got, my first connection, I was so ashamed of the situation that I was in. I didn't want to go sit in a room and talk to people about it. So my first actual connection was to the authors of these memoirs. Caroline Knapp, she's the godmother for me, Drinking a Love Story, and Sarah Hepola, I call her the goddaughter for whatever reason, with the book Blackout. But I started reading these memoirs and really connecting to people. And these are people that I've met Sarah, but Caroline's been dead for 25 years. And I felt like she was my closest friend reading these books. And so that was kind of a jumping off point. I needed to do some clinical stuff too. I needed to learn about brain chemistry. That has been huge for me. And that's a big part of what we do in Shout Sobriety. That is an area where Shout is different from the 12 steps. The 12 steps are based on the big book, which was written 100 years ago. The 12 steps don't really incorporate brain chemistry stuff or modern things that we've learned about nutrition into that recovery program. And so that's something that we really focus on in Shout Sobriety: brain chemistry, nutrition, and then, connection. We call it Shout Sobriety because it's all about being open and vulnerable. I have been shocked to learn how much talking about my story does, not only for the people around me, but for me. People say, "Oh, you're so brave. You're helping so many people." I'm a selfish person, Amber. I really, honestly, at my core, I don't care about helping other people. What I care about is the juice I get from somebody really responding and relating to what I'm saying. So if that's helping people, great. I'm glad that people get help. But I get a ton back from the reactions and the communication and I don't know if you can tell by how much I'm talking, but I'm not an introvert. So connecting with other people is super helpful for me. And that's a big part of what Shout Sobriety is all about.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I love your program and how you run it because it is not AA. And I went to one AA meeting in my life. It was 10 or 15 years before I actually got sober. I was a one and done. I walked in there, felt like the odd man out. Nobody talked to me. And I couldn't wait for the meeting to be over. I left and I never went back. And then I thought about maybe getting sober for 10 years. And then I thought about it again when I got pregnant and had kids. But people are so confused about, how do I get sober? How do I even start? And I think everybody can relate to the fact of feeling like they're the only ones who have a problem, and just the overwhelm of, oh my God, this is such a big change in my life. Can I actually do it?
Yeah.
So when I came across you and you said, well, I saw you wanted to join my program. Let's have a talk. And you called me. I think we talked for over an hour, and it was one of the most amazing conversations I can remember, because you took an interest in me as a person and you asked me so many questions. But just being able to talk to somebody about my struggles was so eye-opening to me. I was like, wow, there's somebody out there who gets it. There's a community out there who gets it. This is not AA. This is something I can get on board with. And I remember every Monday at 5 o'clock, we would meet together on Zoom and we would tell our stories. And I looked forward to seeing you every week and the other group members every week. And I met friends in there that I'm still friends with today, over 4 years later. So I'm curious, what would you tell people who are just thinking about getting sober, maybe sober curious, or maybe if they were like me, I've gone 30 days sober and I keep relapsing. How do you get started to really build serious momentum?
Well, you just said 30 days, but earlier you said 65 days. And I took some notes getting ready for our conversation today. And I wrote the word hump because I remember you had a hump. I didn't remember the number, but that's something I distinctly remember from our first conversation was you said, I keep getting to this number. And now I know it's 65. And then that's when I relapse. And that's so typical. I mean, that's so common. We've got all of these things in our life that are trying to draw us back in, right? For me, grilling, sitting on the back porch on a Saturday afternoon in the sun, mowing the lawn, the end of a work day, any kind of social event or any kind of a work after hours thing. All these things are trying to draw us back in. And so getting over the hump is what it's all about. One of the big things for me, I do own the label. I'm happy to call myself a recovered alcoholic. I use the past tense of recover. I don't consider myself to continually be in recovery. I think that was a battle that I fought, and I was happy and lucky to be successful. And now I don't continue. I don't think that I'm right on the edge of a relapse at all times. Now I have to be vigilant. I have to take care of my self-esteem. I think that's the biggest driver. If we don't feel good about ourselves, then I think that's a huge thing that leads to relapse. I have to stay on top of my nutrition and my exercise and my sleep. Oh my God, Amber, the older I get, I'm in my 50s now. That sleep piece is huge. I used to live by the mantra, I'll get all the sleep I need when I'm dead. I'm Mr. Tough Guy over here. And now, stress definitely depletes my sleep. So there are times when I don't get full sleep, but I at least appreciate that now. And I say, okay, I've got to do something else then. I've got to spend some time out in nature today because I didn't get the sleep I needed and I can't get out of balance. So I think staying on top and staying away from our triggers is important at the beginning, getting over the hump, but it remains important if we have a growth mindset and we want to continue to just advance as a human and advance in our relationships. So that's why, like I said, I consider myself a recovered alcoholic. I'm not still trying to stop drinking. Like I did that, but that doesn't mean I'm done. Like there's all kinds of growth to aim for. But as far as that beginning piece, that getting over the hump, it was important for me. Like I said, I own the label alcoholic now, but back then I struggled with that. Like, am I or am I not? That would lead me to go periods of sobriety. And then I'd just say, I wasn't really that bad. I can drink, and I would try again. I had 10 years, Amber, where I went back and forth between sobriety and drinking. But the two big questions for me are, is alcohol causing me problems? And they can be big problems or small problems, but is alcohol clearly causing me identifiable problems in my life? And do I think about drinking when I'm not drinking? And that can be anticipation of the weekend. Here we are, it's Wednesday, and this weekend I got this boondog. I'm going to go. I know camping was big for you. I'm going to go camping with my family, and there's going to be booze everywhere, and I just can't wait. Or thinking about drinking can be dread and, remorse. I overdid it last weekend, and I feel bad, and I got in a fight with my wife, and I was tense around my kids, and I feel bad about myself. So whether it's forecasting or looking back, if alcohol is occupying any of my brain space when I'm not drinking, that's a huge red flag and one that I ignored for a very long time, along with, is it causing problems in my life? And so I say to people, if you answer yes to those two questions, don't worry about the label. Don't worry about whether you call yourself an alcoholic or not. Don't worry about whether you watch Leaving Las Vegas and you can identify with the main character. Like, none of that's important. If it's causing you problems and you're thinking about it when you're not drinking, you would be better off without alcohol in your life. And then from that on, it just becomes, persistence. And I don't believe that white knuckling is the way to go. I believe community and having a program is the way to go. And I think those are two distinct things. That's why, just in AA, for an example, because so many people are familiar with AA, there are people that do well in AA because of the community. And there are other people that work the steps. And there are some people that do both, but they are separate things. And that's why, like in Shout Sobriety, we have a curriculum, an online curriculum. And some people really dive in and get a ton from it. Other people, just coming to those Monday Zooms is what they need to help keep them on the straight and narrow because of the connection that they make with the community. So finding your community, finding your program, whatever that is for you. And for a lot of people, exercise and running is a huge part of the program. And that's why I am so proud of you and so impressed with the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Well, This leads me to my next question. And I know that you're a big reader, you're a big researcher. So what can you tell us about the connection between exercise and sobriety? Because we love to talk about that here in Recovery Roadrunners. We we love running, we love exercising, lifting weights, hiking, biking, and we really work that into our everyday lifestyle. I tell people, hey, when you're feeling cravings to drink, go for a walk, go for a run. This is something you can do 2 or 3 times a day to get you through that first month of sobriety when things are really, really tough. So, what can you tell us about what you know about exercise and sobriety?
Well, one thing I can tell you is that I've done a 180 over the years. Now I promote vigorously things like therapy. I promote vigorously getting out in nature, exercising, eating right, sleeping, doing all the things that, I think we have as a society for a long time backburnered those things. We say, yeah, they're important, but what's really important is that I get my work done, even if that's a 14-hour day and I'm super stressed. And I'll use a chemical if I need to help me along the way, whether that's alcohol or an antidepressant. I'm not against antidepressants. I don't want to, but I don't think they should be the first avenue we go to. So when I say I've done a 180, all these things that I've always said, yeah, but about, right? So yeah, I need to get out. I need to go for a run, but I've got this work thing and it's got to take priority. So I'm not going to run today. All the yeah buts I have totally flip-flopped and started to prioritize in my life and recognize, no, my success in career, because like a lot of people, I transferred my alcohol addiction, and one of my transferences is to work. I am a workaholic and I struggle with that. Where I say I'm a recovered alcoholic, I haven't had anything to drink in well over 7 years. I continually battle the work piece, keeping balance in my life and recognizing that the thing that I think is so important, it really doesn't matter. One thing that helps me with that is I've heard people talk about how in 100 years, nobody's going to know your name. Nobody's going to know you or your contribution or anything. So this thing that I'm all tied up in knots about, it's probably not going to matter next week. And it's definitely not going to matter to your grandkids. So just get over yourself and relieve some of that work stress. But the way to do that for me is all these yeah, but things that, yeah, we know they're important, but do we actually do them? And so exercise is definitely at the top of that list for me. And you asked about the connection. As I am a researcher, I actually am. I do research on the intersection of intimacy and addiction. I'm working on a research project through the University of Minnesota right now. In December, I'll finish my master's degree in sexual health. So this is I'm not just a researcher, like I get on the internet a lot, like I actually do this as part of my job now. And I've become convinced about the importance of self-esteem as it relates to a lot of things, but certainly sobriety. We don't have the need to self-medicate when we feel good about ourselves. And there are a few things that are right at the top of my list for ways to build self-esteem. And exercise is among the upper peer of those, because when we don't want to go for a run, if it's cold and kind of soggy out and I'm just not feeling it. But you push through that initial feeling of dread about it and you go and you do it. And then when you're done, oh my God, do I feel good about myself? I feel accomplished. My body is thanking me. And even when I've pushed, run a little harder than I normally do, or run a little faster than I normally do, or whatever, and I've got those aches and pains are thanking me. Because I recognize, like I said, I'm in my 50s now. I can look around and see, look, I can do things that other 50-year-olds can't do anymore. And so that is a motivator in and of itself. But just feeling good about yourself, the research shows, is a huge key to staying sober. So does it have to be specifically exercise? No, but I think exercise is a great outlet and it's a great place for people to go. And one of the great things about exercise is you can tailor it for yourself, right? I know one of the things I love about you, Amber, is, you do these like ultras, right? Like you're a crazy runner. Like I would never do what you do. I can't even imagine it. It's so awesome and so inspiring. But you work with people for whom walking half a mile is a starting point, and you don't disparage those people or make them feel bad about themselves. It's about moving our bodies and getting going. And you are an all-in kind of a person. Like, you want the big tent. You welcome everybody, no matter where they are on their health and exercise journey. And that is to your great credit. Really, really proud of you for that.
Oh, thanks, Matt. Yeah, we have people from all walks of life in Recovery Roadrunners. We have the beginners, and we have people who have never run before, who have never exercised before. And we love to share stories and strategies to help these people put on their shoes and get out the door. And I love what you say about building confidence and carrying that confidence into your sobriety. Because, like you said, if we don't feel good about ourselves, then we're just going to reach for a drink. But exercise makes us feel better, look better. And when I feel like I look good, I'm like, yeah, I got this. And I lost a ton of weight when I got sober and trained for my first half marathon in sobriety. I lost almost 50 pounds, and that'll make you confident, right? So tell us about your exercise routine, Matt. What do you do? How often do you work out? What types of exercise do you do? Yeah, tell us about
Yeah,
you.
yeah, that's been quite a journey. I remember back when I was still drinking, I was pretty consistently a runner. I wasn't a college athlete like you. I was the road of official, organized athletics ended for me at the end of high school. But I'm a soccer player, and I still play in adult men's leagues. I currently coach high school soccer, and I play with the kids. So I don't just stand on the sideline and coach. Like, I'm in there kicking it around. So exercise has remained an important part of my life. But backing up, when I was a drinker, I equated exercise with weight loss. Like, that was the direct correlation for me. And so I would eat like shit. I mean, like, I was Doritos' biggest customer. And then I would run 3 miles, and then I wouldn't understand why it wasn't working out for me. I didn't understand that, in my opinion, exercise is more of a mental health driver than it is a physical health driver. And when we exercise and get that self-esteem and get those dopamine hits and we feel good about ourselves, then we make better nutrition decisions. And those better nutrition decisions lead to the weight loss. So I think they're all combined, but I think it took a long time for me to not just have this be a direct one-to-one correlation that wasn't working of, if I just exercise more, I'll lose weight. I didn't understand the mental health piece that had to be in the middle there. So I pounded a lot of pavement, wasting time. Like, my goals were wrong and none of it worked. And so I would go back and forth. I'd be a runner, and then I'd give it up, and then I'd be a runner and I'd give it up. So for many, many years, for my whole adult life, running was in there. But it wasn't until I got sober and I'd go on a run because, my neurotransmitters, my dopamine, was totally hijacked by alcohol, as most, if not all, people with drinking problems experience that. And so in early sobriety, a lot of the anxiety and the depression that I faced was because I wasn't getting dopamine from anywhere. My brain had downregulated my dopamine and saved it only for when I was drinking. And then when I stopped drinking, I wasn't getting it at all. And I started to get glimmers. If I'd go for 3 miles and the weather was nice, like, I wasn't ready to run in the snow yet, right? I wasn't ready to be a tough guy. But if everything was perfect, if it was, light breeze, 75 degrees and sunny, and I'd go for a run, I would feel amazing. And I was like, okay, nothing else is giving me that in my life right now. I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not getting dopamine there. So I started to make the connection between exercise and mental health. And, it just grew over time. Where I am right now, if I'm in season for soccer, so I'm coaching 5 days a week, I'm getting exercise with the kids, all those coaching days. I've got about 5 different 4 mile loops in my neighborhood that I like. And I'll do that a couple of times a week when I'm in season. When I'm out of season, when I'm only doing soccer with the kids a couple of days a week, I'll probably do that 3 or 4 times a week. So probably 6 days a week, there's some kind of cardio involved. I've got a little weights routine. I've got this old, like, 1990s Bowflex in my basement. So nothing fancy by any means, but I've got a 20-minute deal that I do on that. And it's all about, what is it? Staying under tension. There's a terminology for it that I can't think of, but not fast reps, really slow reps so that you keep your muscles under tension for a long period of time. I'm rocking in my chair while I'm doing that. I know this is radio, not TV, so I feel kind of silly. But so yeah, a little weight deal for 20 minutes. And I say every day, and most weeks it is 7 days a week, but probably 300 days a year. There's vacation in there, and there's days where I just can't muster the mental strength to do it. But so a little bit of weights and some cardio every day. And again, I don't do it for weight loss or for, strength or because I want my muscles to look a certain way. I do it for the mental health piece, and it leads to all kinds of other good decisions that I make throughout the day that result in an overall what I consider to be pretty healthy package. Feeling pretty good.
100%. We're totally on the same page, like twins. So, Matt, you talk about running and how amazing it makes you feel. I feel that way every single day. And I know a lot of people who I talk to, they're like, wow, I never knew that running. I used to hate running. I never knew I could actually feel good by running. And so, Doug, you're going to have to cut this part out here because I'm having a brain fart. So let's talk about the feeling of the runner's high. Okay. I get the runner's high every single day, and it sounds like you know exactly what I'm talking about. But there's a connection between sobriety and the runner's high. And when we want to quit drinking, we're really hanging on to the fact that, well, I really like that feeling that it gives me, and I can't get that feeling anywhere else. But I would argue that, hell yeah, you can. You can get it by running. And it's the dopamine and it's the endorphins that we get by running. Yeah, we can find it in a bottle, but with extreme consequences.
Yeah.
So that's why I always say you got to go outside, move your body, walking and running. And when I start running, after just a couple of minutes, I start to feel in my body like tingling and like this extreme euphoria. And it gets better and better the longer that I run. And that's why I run so far, because I'm like, I love this. Give me more. Am I addicted to running? Yes, because I feel amazing. And it is, it's great for my mental health and for my physical health, but the runner's high is why I run. And inside my body, I just feel like it's the best part of my day. Can you relate to that?
Yes, for the most part. I am not surprised to hear you talk about that euphoric feeling toward the beginning of a run and just continuing to chase that, because I know how important this is in your life and I know how far you go. It's different for me for sure. There is a sense of satisfaction. It's not as like I remember the euphoric feeling from drinking. It's not the same for me. And so it took me a little while to say, how important is this running thing? Yeah, when I was early on in sobriety and it was my only source of dopamine, yes, that felt amazing. But as things started to level out and I started to feel dopamine from other everyday good feelings, again, tying it to the growth in self-esteem and just the overall piece of health and understanding not only am I running, but I'm in nature. I'm breathing fresh air. Whether I'm, if I get to go on a trail run, all the better, right? But most of the time I run in my neighborhood, just down streets with houses. And even just, looking at the way they've decorated for a holiday or who's mowed their lawn or hasn't, just focusing on natural things, the leaves on the trees and the changing of the seasons, stuff like that. It really helps me in more of an overall way. So it's not, I don't get the runner's high, the burst kind of euphoric runner's high that some people describe and that I know that is important to you. But I think that's okay. I think it's important that people recognize that there can be a more subtle way for that connection to nature to kind of carry through the day. And it absolutely does that for me. It can be 5 hours after I've run and I'm working on something and it's not going great. And I'll remind myself, oh, but you got out and you ran and you took care of your body today. And that like brings me this kind of subtle joy. So less euphoric blast and more subtle joy, but I think equally important. And I think as people, individuals, unique individuals, we probably experience things like nature and exercise and nutrition. We experience them in different ways. And I think it's okay that we celebrate things that are different, as long as we recognize that we're still doing something good for ourselves, and just kind of glom onto that, find that piece. What is it about this that's important to you? And let that again help to build the self-esteem. You mentioned being, you said, am I addicted to running? Absolutely. I want to reference Dr. Anna Lemke's work. She wrote a book. It came out in the summer of 21 or 22, can't remember, called Dopamine Nation. She was one of the first people for me that really tied together this idea that we can become addicted to anything. So when we think about transfer addictions, yeah, I think exercise can absolutely become an addiction. But in the kind of old school AA church basement thing, everyone's in there smoking, right? And they're eating donuts. And so yeah, that's a transfer addiction that also has huge negative consequences. I think we've got to look at what the negative consequences are for whatever we're transferring to. And I think exercise is just lower on that risk factor, right? I mean, you're doing good things for your body, you're doing good things for your mental health. And so, yeah, can you go too far? Can it become an obsession? I knew a guy growing up that ran every single day except for Christmas, and it actually caused lots of problems in his family. And he eventually, that relationship ended in divorce because he couldn't temper it. He couldn't moderate and prioritize his family. Like, they'd be on vacation, or they'd be traveling, right? They'd be traveling to vacation, and they'd have a big airport day, and he would leave them and go run 3 laps around the airport and almost miss the flight, right? So like, can it become an obsession? Can it go too far? Absolutely. But I think the positives far outweigh the negatives when it comes to exercise. Just something to be mindful of, in my opinion, that we can actually become addicted to absolutely anything. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. And when you were speaking, you're like, well, the runner's high isn't exactly the same for me as it is for you. I totally relate to that. And I hear a lot of other people say, yeah, I don't really feel it like you do, but I feel it like this. And I think we can all agree that the benefits of exercise are amazing. And
Yeah.
it, it's kind of like, well, how are you using it, right? Like, I know somebody who walked off 100 pounds and changed his entire diet, and now he's sober for 8 years. So you don't have to be a crazy runner to experience the benefits of exercise. But just to clarify my point, so you guys can relate to me a little more, in order to get that runner's high, no, I'm not going to just go out my door down the bike trail and the same boring loop every day. That's not going to get me the runner's high. It is, like you said, getting into nature. So I love to go trail running. I'll go on the trail, I'll go up a mountain and challenge myself and push myself to do something hard. That's when I really start to feel good, is when I get to the top of the mountain and now I get to go down. I've got on a kick-ass playlist. I've got my training partner, life partner, Vinny, with me. I'm enjoying the scenery. I'm enjoying the music, and it's all coming together. My perspective has shifted to higher ground, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Everything about this is amazing. And then you run down. But what was I going to say? Doug, you're going to have to cut this part out too. So everybody loves a good success story, right, Matt? Let's talk about success stories. I would love to go back to how you and I met, and maybe you can tell us, your perspective of the success story that you've seen in me. And like I said from the very beginning, you are one of the most important people in my life. And I know we've never met in person, but I've I have so much respect for you and the work that you do. And you are one of 3 people in my life who helped me actually stay sober and overcome so many hurdles. We've known each other for almost 5 years now. So do you remember what I was like back in the very beginning?
There were a few things that stand out. One, that hump, that number. I mean, you were you've mentioned it, and I've mentioned it on this discussion, but you were fixated on it. This hurdle, this 65 days. I mean, it might as well have been the Great Wall of China. Like, it was insurmountable for you back then mentally, and it was nothing more than a mental hump. But I remember how big of a deal that was, and so when you got over it, and then you got past it, like there was like the wind was at your sails at that point. Like it really gave you a lot of momentum. So I think while that specific number is unique to you, there are a lot of people that have some kind of mental hurdle that they have to get over before sobriety starts to become aspirational as opposed to something they're just dreading. And I would say not only some people, most people, I would say all people. There's something we've got to get past. For a lot of people, I do. So the work that we do now is relationship work. For a lot of people, when we first meet them and they're seeking sobriety, they're doing it because they're trying to save their marriage. And so it's a lot of guys that are trying to quit drinking so that their wife won't leave them. And you've got to get past that and internalize the positive impacts of sobriety on yourself, find your recovery program, and to have that growth mindset and want it to be something you want to do for yourself. And so that's the hurdle for a lot of people. I'm just quitting because something's making me court ordered, my spouse, other family members. But for you, that hurdle was that 65 days. I always remember that you were very, very positive. It was inspirational, your positivity. It was more than me. I mean, I'm an optimist, but you were like extra optimistic. And so your positivity was infectious. And so not only do I think it was helpful to you as you work toward early sobriety, but it was also infectious to the other people in the group. So, I can't remember you ever saying something negative. So that positivity is another big early kind of inspirational thing that I remember from our conversations. There's one conversation specifically that I remember, though. I was on vacation in the Smoky Mountains with my family, and we stopped to use the bathroom or whatever, and I saw that I had a message from you, and so I called you back. And a lot of people, when they get sober, when they find recovery, they want to pay it forward. They want to become part of the solution. They want to help others. I mean, that's universal. Almost everybody that we meet wants to, in one way or the other, help other people. And so I get a lot of conversation. I have a lot of conversations with people that are like, well, here's my idea. Here's my plan. Here's the thing I want to do. 98% of the time that fizzles. And it's not because people are bad or people are lazy. It's nothing like that. It's just priorities and things get in the way and work's tough and family and things like that, right? So people want to help, but they often don't. You carried it across the finish line, sister. You had these big ideas. I don't remember exactly what we talked about when I was on the Smoky Mountains, but I remember pulling over while the family went to, freshen up and having this conversation with you and getting off the phone and being like, she's serious. Like, she's going to do this. Whereas I think a lot of people have concepts that don't get carried out. And here you are, you've done it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think one of the things that I am most inspired by about you is that you're willing to follow where things are going. You are not just dead set on this is what my plan is going to be. You follow the needs of the people, right? And so while exercise and running is the core, you look for things that are working and things that don't work as well, and you follow the things that are working. And that's to your credit, because there's a lot of stubborn people out there. So you're willing to flow and make Recovery Roadrunner what it is today based on not only your desires, but the needs of the people. That's really great. Because, the truth is, Amber, most of us aren't very good listeners, and you're a good listener. So that's great.
Matt, you helped me overcome not one, but two hurdles. Okay. The first one was getting sober in the first place, when my ex-husband didn't want me to quit. My parents didn't want me to quit. My friends, nobody wanted me to stop drinking.
I remember those. I remember those camping stories, those camping trips, and there's like booze everywhere, but you love camping. You don't want to not go camping, and you want to take care of your boys in that way. You want to show them camping. But I remember that there were forces working against you. Let's just say that.
There were, but all you need is one person in your life to support you, build you up, give you confidence, and say, yes, you can do it. Even if they don't want you to, yes, you can. And you were that person for me. So thank you, Matt. But you also, after I got sober and I was almost 9 months sober, I had the idea for Recovery Roadrunners. And I'm like, this is a great idea. Let's round up all the sober runners. Who can I talk to about this? You're the first person I thought of. So I called you and you answered, and we had this amazing conversation. I'm like, Matt, I have this idea. What do you think? And of course, you had my back more than anybody ever had. And after I talked to you about this, I was just filled with hope like, yes, this is going to work. This is going to be a great thing. People need this. I started to share my idea with other people, and my parents were like, no, you can't do that. Some of my friends, no, you can't do that, because at that time I was teaching second grade. I had this cushy career. It was all set up. It was good. I liked it, right? It was paying the bills. But I'm like, I think I was made for more. I want to do something else. I don't want to be a teacher anymore. Everybody said, no, you can't quit your job. You can't start your own business. 99.9% of new businesses fail. So I had all of this negativity coming in, and people were trying to convince me to not do it. I went with my gut and I was like, all of you, like, you don't understand. The one person who understood was you. And then there was a couple other people, and I'm so glad that I followed my intuition, and here we are today. So all you need is one person, and follow your gut. Do what you know is right in your heart, because your intuition speaks to you. Your heart, what you feel inside your body, is truth. It's not what other people are saying, because it's not their life and they don't know what's best for you.
Well, I appreciate you giving me way more credit than I deserve for believing in you. I did believe in you, but I want to go back to what I said about positivity. And I mean, you have been inspiring since day one, and you've got to have that tenacity that you have. That is kind of unique. I do believe in following your dreams. I do believe that once we get the toxicity out, once we get the poison out of our body, that our intuition or our instincts are solid, and that following them is great. But I don't want you to discount how much drive that you have. I mean, you were a Division I college athlete. That's a big part of it, because I do meet a lot of people with big ideas and it just doesn't get over the finish line. So I would hate for all the people that are listening to go out and quit their jobs tomorrow and say, I'm going to go for this thing. I mean, you got to have a plan. You got to have incredible tenacity. You've got to have a runway, a financial runway to make it work, because for a while it doesn't work. Right. But you are inspiring. You're also unique to a certain degree, in that you had what it takes to make it over the finish line. So I hope you give yourself credit for that.
I do. Thank you for saying that. I certainly do. I know everything that you say is true. And going with what you said, some of my big ideas don't work.
Mhm.
I have these huge, big dreams and ideas. I'll run them by Vinny, and he's like, what the hell are you talking about? That will never work. Like, no, no, no. And sometimes I'm just like, no, but you don't understand. I'm just so filled with big dreams. And so, but I really do believe that in sobriety, we are unstoppable.
Yeah.
And we step into a new person, a brand new identity. And it's a beautiful time to rediscover who you are at the core. What really makes you happy? It's not alcohol.
Yeah.
Go back to your childhood and figure out, what did I used to like to do? And who do I want to be going forward? And it's a beautiful time to reinvent yourself, and the possibilities are unlimited.
Yeah, totally agree. We are unstoppable, but we are also still human. I love this story. I remember when I was like 3 weeks sober. Now I had periods of sobriety, but I mean, this was this time, right? This is the time I made it over the hump. I was 3 weeks sober, and I was taking with my kids to school, and I was parallel parking, and I ran into the car behind me and dented the fender. And I was so despondent from that. I thought, I'm finally doing the right thing. I'm finally taking this beast on. I'm finally getting healthy, and I'm sober. And I still have things like this happening to me. So I mean, it almost wrecked my sobriety. I almost started drinking because I'm like, well, if I'm, if shit's still going to happen, then why am I sober? Like, why shouldn't I drink? And that was a huge thing for me to get over and realize we're still human. Appliances in our house still break. We still, have kids that do boneheaded things, and we have to be good parents and help them get out of the jam that they've gotten themselves into. And bad things still happen to good people. And recognizing that the growth mindset and the making progress and the being unstoppable, we've got to recognize that it's like 2 steps forward and 1 back. We can't let that 1 step back get us, right? I mean, if you're running the distances you're running, Amber, you're going to have physical setbacks, right? You're going to get injured. But you can't let that stop you, right? You do the recovery work, you do the rehab, and you get back out there. And that is what sobriety and recovery has done for me. I didn't have the tenacity as a drinker that I have now. It would be easy for me to say, oh well, I tried, didn't work. Let's have a drink and think of the next thing. Whereas now the pursuit is kind of relentless with understanding that those setbacks are going to happen.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Matt, for being here. Where can people find you if they want to read your work and listen to you?
Yeah, I think since this is a podcast, the first place we should point people who are already podcast listeners is to our Untoxicated podcast. That's something that my wife Sherry and I host together. We do a lot of work, again, on relationships. That's the focus. Relationships in active addiction and relationships in sobriety and recovery and what that looks like. So the Untoxicated, not Unintoxicated, the Untoxicated podcast is available wherever people get their podcasts for sure. And then since you referenced it, our website and blog is soberandunashamed.com. From either of those 2 places, the Untoxicated podcast or the Sober and Unashamed blog, you can link to the peer support groups that we run, Shout Sobriety, and the one that we do for the loved ones of alcoholics called Echoes of Recovery. So lots of links to find there. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to welcome people over to our work as well.
Yes, we share our passion for helping people in sobriety. And if you're going to listen to Matt, be prepared for all sorts of cool and interesting topics that other people are not talking about. He likes to shock people with really cool stories. So super interesting person, Matt. Thank you so much for everything you've done for me and that you continue to do for the sobriety world. And thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. This vehicle, this recording, this podcast episode, I look at it just as a great opportunity for me to see your face for an hour and catch up. And I hope we get to do it again real soon. Thanks for having me on today.
I would love to. Thanks, Matt. Bye-bye, everybody. Awesome. I'm going to stop the recording.